Science Minds. I am very, very pleased to have Lonnie Zwaigenbaum with us today. Super excited to just have a great conversation with you. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much.
Awesome. So I'd like to just get started and hear a little bit from you on sort of the early career trajectory, and especially like what brought you into medicine, what got you interested in like pediatrics to begin with.
Yeah.
Maybe we can start kind of early there.
I always enjoyed working with kids, so when I first thought of medicine, I thought like immediately of going into pediatrics. I remember in high school, the things that really appealed to me were about how kids learned, and I had to sort of park that because when you go to medical school, you learn about human anatomy and physiology, and it wasn't until second year medicine that I had a lecture from an amazing person who went on to be just a great mentor and friend, Wendy Roberts, who's a developmental pediatrician. I had no idea that you could do that kind of work within medicine, and it was really at that point I decided that not only did I want to do pediatrics, but I wanted to do developmental pediatrics. Yeah. I mean, it was a bit of a circuitous kind of route after that, but it gave me a bit of a goal to work towards.
Yeah. Well, what about your college years? Like where, if you were interested in kind of like learning in high school, was there a shift that happened in college, or where, like, what was going on during that time for you?
I went to university at a time where you could apply to medical school out of second year. My official major was actually math and physics.
Oh, cool.
And I mean, it's interesting because I never quite imagined going into research, but I guess I was a bit of a math nerd. So ultimately, the ability to kind of to work with data and kind of really appealed to me. But it was really the opportunity to take psychology courses that really reinforced my interest in child development and learning. And I think that was a real bridge to be interested in going into developmental pediatrics.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. So then where did autism fit in along this path? How did that come about?
Yeah, I have to say I didn't really know about anything about autism out of medical school. I think I was the typical med student that had an hour lecture sort of the entire 4 years, and we spent all our time trying to memorize the DSM criteria, that rather than understanding what autism was, what autistic people experience, and what they need in the healthcare system. Yeah. But as it turns out, Wendy, who got me interested in developmental pediatrics, was really becoming interested in autism around the time a colleague and I started our subspecialty residency in developmental pediatrics with her and the team there. And they're such a cool and amazing group of kids and families to work with. I think Wendy's interest definitely transferred over to us, and by the end of the 2-year fellowship, I knew it was the area that I wanted to work in.
Yeah, and then the research piece was just a natural extension.
Yeah, so Wendy introduced me to a colleague of hers named Peter Zatmari, who was one of the leading autism researchers in Canada at the time. He was actually a child psychiatrist, but a really reflective and inquisitive and fun person that was actually at the time focused on autism and genetics. And because of my interest in autism and feeling that I still had a lot to learn, I welcomed the opportunity to spend time with Peter, learning more about autism as well as about research methods. And it was over that time I got to meet other colleagues, including Susan Bryson, and kind of shifted my area of focus related to autism from genetics to really thinking about early development and what needed to happen in a physician's office to make sure that young kids with early signs of autism would get picked up.
For sure. Well, I think that's like a big disconnect, right? And I've seen some talks, and some of your graduate students do some work in this area, right? Of like, we think that pediatricians should be like that first line of defense for looking for early signs of autism and for early identification, getting kids diagnoses. But I think that oftentimes falls apart and breaks down. What do you think you bring to the field as a kind of having a background in pediatrics? Like, where do you kind of see yourself fitting in or bringing to the field that way?
Yeah, interesting reflections on that. I mean, I think that when we embarked on this line of research looking for early signs of autism in younger siblings of autistic kids, I think our assumption was that if only we could kind of orient and teach community professionals, including pediatricians, what to look for, then all the kids could be getting diagnosed at an early stage. And I mean, as you know, autism has a pretty sort of kind of checkered and negative history, and there was the sort of early, it's in kind of its evolution, there was a lot of blame. I mean, a lot of blame being assigned at parents. I feel like when I started this area of research, that there's a lot of blame being directed at community physicians, that community physicians weren't listening, they weren't looking for the right things, they weren't making referrals. I mean, there's certainly many families that find kind of working with their physician kind of frustrating, that they don't feel that they're being listened to. It's a kind of a diagnostic odyssey to actually sort of get to the right person. I have to say, as a pediatrician, I work really closely with community colleagues, and on the whole, they're actually an incredibly compassionate and caring and knowledgeable group. And at the same time, working with younger siblings and seeing sort of just the diversity in how autism presents, it really made us realize that it's not as simple as sort of being able to look for this kind of narrowly defined set of signs in exactly the same way in all the kids. And also recognizing that when physicians are listening and when they're asking the right questions and looking for the right signs, the system isn't necessarily responding. Sometimes it's hard to navigate that referral system. Families are waiting a long time, and likewise, I think sometimes community physicians are a bit discouraged to make referrals because they're not quite sure that the system is going to be supportive of families and respond in a timely way. So I feel like what I bring is, that I feel like I've been privileged to have a chance to work with a team to learn about early signs of autism, and I also recognize just the humility that's needed around early diagnosis and recognizing that it's not quite as simple as saying that physicians aren't listening. I mean, I think there are broader health system issues that get in the way of diagnosis.
For sure. So what do you think, what is the missing link in your mind? Where do you think these breakdowns, where do we need to put our focus?
Yeah, I think that there's exciting progress in terms of characterizing the earliest features of autism and across the diversity of autistic people. I think that I think where we need to focus as well is recognizing that it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all approach, either in terms of early detection or diagnosis, and also recognizing that continuing to build the knowledge base around early signs is not going to make a difference if we're not at the same time building capacity within the system, both for assessment and also the ability to respond to those early signs by providing supports and services and sort of specific interventions to help those children continue to thrive and learn and develop.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say about how sort of shifts, thinking about changes in the DSM from 4 to 5, just changes that have come about through the neurodiversity movement, and just how sort of as a society we're thinking and conceptualizing autism, right? There's been huge changes in the past 10 years, the past 20 years if you zoom out further. Yeah. How has that changed your thinking or approach to early identification?
Yeah, a great question. I mean, first of all, I think it really shapes how we talk about autism and how we communicate to autistic individuals and their families. I find both clinically as well as in a research situation, you can't go wrong sort of using neutral, respective, descriptive language. Yeah. It allows parents to tell their story without having to sort of make all the decisions about the DSM. It helps us stay open-minded and to make sure that we're not prematurely sort of deciding, yes, this child absolutely has autism, or no, there's no possible way, and just sort of recognizing sort of the subtleties and the nuances that can go into thinking about diagnosis, and recognizing that being autistic it may be about having specific areas of need, but it's also about having specific strengths. And I think that recognizing the strengths sort of helps convey hope and possibility in a way that allows families and autistic people to leave that kind of appointment with a sense of optimism. And it also, I think, allows sort of for a more nuanced and comprehensive characterization of autism. Like if we're just looking for the challenges, we're probably not going to do as well even in terms of early detection.
Yeah. I really admire just, all these different perspectives that you bring in, right? You have like some just really cool experience and perspective, especially like across your career. What's the thing that is most like fun to you about this field, or that you enjoy the most?
I mean, honestly, getting to know the kids and families over time, and see who those little kids grow up to be, and what amazing people with such capabilities and the successes in their lives. And increasingly, it's the opportunity to work with autistic colleagues who sort of bring a very unique dual perspective, sort of kind of through their experience in kind of in their own educational experiences and also their living experience related to autism. I actually have a colleague who just defended his master's last week. He's an autistic young man who was diagnosed when he was age 3. Had a horrible experience in the health system. The physician basically told his parents that he would never complete high school and to sort of brace themselves for kind of a life of hardship. He thrived. He went to university. Initially in biological sciences, he kind of found himself a bit marginalized and needed to kind of shift paths. Ended up kind of working in our lab and shifting sort of from that biological focus to actually kind of social sciences and qualitative research. And his research focused on what's needed in pediatric residency training programs to help prepare new trainees to be good doctors and sort of kind of provide kind of good care. And he himself wants to now become a health professional and sort of bring that dual perspective to kind of training and practice.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is such a great story. Where do you sort of see your work, especially in early intervention, where do you see it going in the next 10 years? Like where do you see the field sort of headed, and what are you excited about?
I think both around early assessment as well as early intervention. I think that we've now got kind of well-developed, manualized, kind of evidence-based programs. I think the next frontier is like how we spread and scale them to make them readily accessible and more equitably accessible, sort of to the diversity of the population, both in terms of geography and identity and ethnicity. And really thinking about creative ways to incorporate technology and telehealth, to think about how we build capacity through professional training, and how we kind of give back to the community and sort of think about how we spend our time as specialists by sort of empowering other professionals to conduct the work, so that we're actually able to make it more accessible to the full number of people that need it.
That's one of the aspects of our work, and I think society more broadly, is there's this push to scale things, right? And there's immense pressure to make things like cheaper, more scalable, more generalizable. But also this realization and push of like individualization, right? And like one size doesn't fit all. And these interventions, in my experience as a special education teacher for 10 years, like really on the individual level is where things are most effective and most scalable. And I'm just interested in your sort of thinking about the tension between those two things. And how do you balance it and reconcile it? And I'm going to add one more layer to this, which is thinking about like this push everywhere for AI, and where does that fit in? And like at the end of the day, like where do we land? What do we need to do as good clinicians and good researchers to help people? That's a huge question. I know you can bite off any chunk of it you want, but like that's this tension and internal questions that I just always come back to.
I agree. I think that I think we're all grappling with those issues right now, and I think you really articulately described that tension between making services more available, but not compromising sort of both on the quality and integrity and the ability to take an individualized approach. I think part of it is that the goal of that if we're implementing programs on a larger scale, the primary goal has to be both access and quality. That if it's just about efficiency and cost saving, then I do think that there's a risk of compromising sort of at that quality end. I think that it's, and this relates a bit to the question around AI. I think that at a time that we're stretching ourselves so thin, we have to appreciate the importance of clinical expertise, and sort of how some of those intangibles might actually might inform sort of our ability to both scale and individualize. So as we're scaling, we have to do it in a way that it's not just a handoff, but it's more of a community of practice where there's flexibility for ongoing interaction between community professionals and specialty teams, an opportunity not to get locked in too soon and to kind of continue to refine. And I think that shifting from our traditional research models to more sort of quality improvement science, like learning health systems, so that the whole enterprise continues to evolve and improve. Mm-hmm. And around artificial intelligence, I mean, I think it's a very exciting time. I think like all of our other approaches, I think we have to recognize that it's a tool towards our goals. It's never going to be a proxy for all the things that we want to do, and the component of clinical expertise and humanity and compassion. But I think sort of exercising it as a tool can further refine sort of that individualization process.
For sure. Well, something about your work that I really appreciate is the recognition of like the qualitative work, and that incorporating sort of this qualitative research arm and letting that inform other areas of what you're doing. I think that really like demonstrates the restraint that you need to maybe balance these things and keep the fidelity. So I think that's unique to the work that you're doing, and I think that the field benefits from it significantly.
I'm grateful for that. I think that listening to autistic people and to autistic kids and to parents, I think also is essential for us to continue to grow as a field and to continue to refine not only our approaches but the way we think about these issues and the questions that we ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the last question I want to ask you is, if you zoom away from your own work, what are you excited about in the field for the future?
Great. It's almost the flip side, but I mean, it's an incredible experience visiting the Mind Institute, and the converse of sort of systems level research and thinking about sort of population approaches is the whole area of precision medicine, and sort of how particular sort of biologically driven approaches might actually sort of improve the well-being and opportunities for people. So I feel like as that the assessment technology and our understanding of biology improves, and we actually sort of have like specific therapies and kind of biologically based supports to offer, I feel that could be transformative for a certain segment of the population we work with.
Definitely. Well, these are very exciting times, and I think the field is really lucky to have you helping lead some of these charges. So
that's incredibly kind. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. So thank you very much.
Well, likewise. Thank you.
Awesome.
The UC Davis Mind Institute was founded in 1998 with the promise to reduce and prevent the disabilities that can be associated with autism and other neurodevelopmental conditions. Every day, our clinicians and researchers make progress on that promise. Our groundbreaking research on autism, Fragile X syndrome, chromosome 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, ADHD, and other conditions associated with disability are helping affected individuals achieve their fullest potential. Please visit our website or our social media platforms to find out more about current studies, upcoming events, and how you can help make a difference.